For all the listeners coming in, Charles is joining this week for Behind the Growth. What we're going to be talking about is we are both Americans living abroad and serving the go-to market and the SaaS startup space. There are some different things regarding time zones, and I wanted to continue the conversation because I've talked to a lot of fulfillment people inside of Asia and mostly in Singapore. And I also know that there are teams in Europe with me in Prague, and we all serve the American market. So it's like, last night, for instance, I was up until 2 a.m. But like for you, Charles, that would be a completely different time. So, Charles, welcome. Let's just dive in and continue the conversation for all the listeners that are joining now.
Sounds good. Yeah. Thanks for having me on the pod, Spencer. Great to chat. I think it is an important topic. Folks tend to kind of idealize what it's like to live abroad and live in these amazing cities and have an amazing cost of living. But there's a downside to that. So we can definitely jump into that.
Yeah, so for background, I'm in Prague right now. I'm originally from Connecticut in the United States. And Charles, you're elsewhere.
Yeah, so I'm right now in Thailand, more specifically in Bangkok. So Bangkok is a huge city. I'm from New York, even though I've lived in a bunch of places in my life. But I do seek like big cities. Like some of my friends were like, "Well, why don't you just go and like Koh Samui or like one of the smaller islands?" And my answer to that is I just need a lot of stuff happening around me and be surrounded by international folks. But yeah, Thailand and Bangkok is certainly different from Prague. Pros and cons, I guess.
I mean, like, I'm in a sweater. And you have your shirt halfway open. I mean, like the
Yes.
weather's
Yeah, yeah,
different
yeah.
for sure.
Weather is very different, and yeah, so we could definitely dive into what that looks like, and even like the appeal for Asia versus Europe. I think so. Again, Europe has a ton of, first of all, like much more talent, I would say, than in Asia when it comes to like pure kind of tech. But yeah, like I think the quality of life in Asia can be really fantastic. I think I'm a little bit older than you, so I basically have small kids, and when you have small kids, my God, it's a dream here because you can basically I have like one and a half or almost two nannies that's helping us full time with our kids and with other things around the house, and so that just means that we can just focus our time on the things that we love or just working on our own projects. So that's one of the benefits. And then you can travel across Southeast Asia and all these amazing destinations with the great food culture, very easily. Like in New York, I could never, like, this is pretty much the area of the world you cannot just go for a weekend, right? You can go to the Caribbean. You could even go for like 4 or 5 days, to Europe. But you can't go to Thailand or Singapore or Vietnam for just a couple days. That would be quite exhausting. So definitely some advantages there.
I think it's the inverse here in Europe. So, I mean, like, I'm in Prague, but like I used to study in Italy a long time ago. And it's just like, oh, let's go to Rome for a day. Like I'm going to piss a lot of people off by saying, oh, you just go to this capital city for like 24 hours or like 72 hours, right? And you see the whole city, but you don't really see the whole city, right? And that's why like was one of the reasons I love living here too. Like I'm not a morning guy. I mean, it's like 3 in the afternoon now, and like this is one of the first things I'm doing. But I was never a morning guy. I would, work US hours, wake up at like 7, 8 and have to like drag myself to the office or like even like for my internships and stuff. And I did not enjoy any of that. So,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
not all sunshine and rainbows, right? And I described it earlier to somebody else. It's like, what is it like living in Prague? It's like it's a very great place to have a private but very convenient life. Like in a city. Like I'm in a main city, so and like you are too. So like, I feel like we share the opinion there, right?
Yeah, totally. I will say so again, coming from New York, I thought I could just, other big cities would be easy, but actually Bangkok is way more chaotic than New York City. And New York City, you can just take an Uber and get from point A to point B, or just take the subway really quickly for meetings and stuff. It's really hard here. Like I'm basically taking a motorcycle to go from point A to point B because it's way faster. That's not something you do in any other city in the U.S. Europe actually does take, you can take a motorcycle from A to B, but yeah, basically that's one of the differences. I think, I think what would be interesting also to talk about is it depends what your market is, right? I had told you it's true that my market is mostly the U.S. and I've my entire career has been the U.S. I've only been here for about a year and a half, and the truth is it's hard because I do a lot of late night evenings. Like basically after dinner is like I'm very busy because I have a lot of calls with the U.S. And when I arrived here, I was actually working with a company based in California, a startup which is growing fast, and I was on calls until 4 or 5 a.m. And it was very painful. My wife hated me for that, and yeah, I don't think that's also healthy. So it really depends. Like I think if your market is Europe, that's amazing. Like I work with a lot of founders at the WeWork here, and a lot of them are European, like German, French, Italian, you name it. And it makes sense to your point. Like they have their morning, which is clear. They're like doing the deep work in the morning. And then they have all the meetings and the calls in the afternoon. I think that can work really well for some folks. You can still have calls with the U.S., as I said, but if it's California, that's really painful. So better pick your battles.
Yeah, I, like it's really funny because like all of my friends here, like, well, like the people that I know here as well, like they're in the office, they're in WeWork, but they go rock climbing. Like I still go rock climbing in the morning, but I don't have morning meetings. I keep them so that I can have flexibility. How long did it take you to figure out like your ideal schedule?
I mean, the truth is, it's two things that battle each other. One is it's the privilege to be able to choose, your who you work with, and what you do with your time, and also at the same time the how do you say the obligations you have towards some of the startups you work with. So my role is a little bit different from yours in that I basically like I'm fractional, kind of fractional VP revenue, fractional VP sales, and what that means is you know, for all intent and purposes, that startup will say that I'm their VP sales, right? And so I do one-on-ones with the AEs, and I sometimes jump on calls with strategic stakeholders to be able to have a senior leadership guy who's not the CEO on the call and put pressure on some things and make things move in the right direction. So it's harder to just say, all right, guys, I'm out. There needs to be kind of some preparation for being able to also just kind of transition that team to someone else. So it's a combination of those things. But I immediately realized very quickly when I got here that it was not going to be sustainable. I'm also a night person like you. I can work until 1 a.m. no problem. But there's a difference between working until 1 on, alone on a doc you might be working on or, a workflow you're building, and having a call with somebody who's in New York. It's 3 a.m. your time, and you're supposed to have a highly kind of engaging conversation and funny and challenging. And I just wasn't at my peak in those conversations and realized it's not gonna cut it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I think you have to be honest with yourself in terms of what's your peak performance, and then balance that with the expectations of your clients and the market.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. I just it's what's going through my head right now is what you said earlier about like your wife wasn't happy with you
Yeah.
when you're going to bed so late. Yeah, it's my girlfriend too, man. And I talked to I've got some friends in Singapore, some Clay Bootcamp students that are like interning or working together or something like this, and they say like, oh, how do you serve the U.S. market? And I was like, well, I have a cutoff time at like 10 p.m. for meetings.
Right.
Like unless it's
Right.
like deep work or like really urgent overflow, I started to block my calendar actually, and that's why I asked you about it. So for me, like 6 hours, I'm 6 hours ahead of US East, 9 hours ahead of PST, Pacific time zone. And for you, it's like Europe, it's like what, 6 to 9 hours? It's the same difference, right?
So 6 hours to Europe, 12 hours to the US, to East Coast, and then 15 hours to California.
So do you do it the other way around? Like if you have a meeting with California, do you just do like 9 a.m.? Like do you just go in
Like
reverse?
super, yeah. Like if it's an important one, yes, I'll do that. I'll tell you that I've even lately, I've had a call. For example, there was a really important call with a prospect with a startup, and the CEO was like, "Can you please run the call?" I was like, "Sure." And then I looked at it, and it was like at 4 a.m. and I was like, "You owe me one. I'll join this call, but you owe me one." And so occasionally I'll do those things. Yeah, ideally I block off some much more of my calendar now, so I don't take calls like past 11:30 p.m. here local time, unless it's like really an emergency. The other part I'll say is, as I had told you, like, so I have kind of two hats. One is like fractional go to market, kind of leader. And then on the other side, I've been working on my startup, which is a SaaS startup, kind of like a Loom on steroids with AI. And that's also a challenge when you have your own startup, because you're supposed to service, a lot of my customers are, in the US. So I'm kind of like responding to chat support and those things, or emails at all times. But sometimes people get annoyed because they're like, well, why did it take you 5 hours to get back to me? And the truth, like, I'll have to, figure that out at some point. Another thing I'll say about that is I specifically decided to launch something in the SMB space, like targeting like small and medium businesses and startups, because I can't do enterprise. Like I've sold enterprise for most of my career actually, but I know that doing enterprise means you have to be on like in the same time zone and in the same geo pretty much, because you want to fly in. If you want to close a 50K deal, a 300K deal, etc., you need to fly in. You have to have some presence. You have to show your face. And so, like, it kind of determines the type of business you can build, depending on, your geo and your availability, basically.
I've noticed that in Europe they love shaking hands. I've noticed, like, I mean, like, for enterprise deals as well. Like, I'm in enterprise space and like a higher end of SMB to enterprise, and I've noticed that this is so true. Like right now, like, truth be told, like, I'm talking to a Paris-based logistics company, and I told them on like the third call, I said, listen, if it's easier for me to just come to Paris for 2 or 3 days of a workshop, sit with your team, we can get some coffee, like go to lunch and stuff like this for 3 days. Just tell me. I'm like an hour and a half away. And they said, oh, like I thought that you were in Miami, And I said, no, no, no. I'm in Prague. I could get to Paris like very quickly. And they're like, yeah, that maybe sounds good. I didn't end up going, but like, they were like, oh, like you would actually do that. It's like, of course, and these are tens of thousands of dollars. And I think like with enterprise, people that are selling like SaaS grade enterprise products and not even just services. I think it's going back to that.
Yeah.
Does
yeah,
it make
they're
it
definitely.
harder?
It does make it harder. It does. I mean, if you want to have like a kind of like a more of a digital kind of lifestyle where you can, travel and be remote. Listen, so for me, just, just going back to like what it means to be remote, it means obviously like the freedom to do whatever you want, etc. But there are like some constraints you have on your business, on your, whether it's, SaaS or services. At some point you have to kind of deal with reality. Like even like I earlier was talking about kids. My kids are small now, so I can pick him up and take him to different places. But when your kids get into high school, then that becomes harder. They're not going to say, yeah, Dad, sure, I'll go with you to Mexico or Argentina or wherever. They're going to have their own opinions. So right now that's also makes it easier. I think, listen, as I mentioned, like most of my career, it was in New York. And when you're in New York, first of all, there's a lot of businesses that are local. And from New York, you can just hop on a plane and be in, Alabama or wherever your prospect is very quickly. So I'd be flying quite a bit. This is less when I was kind of fractional, because as a fractional, I wasn't necessarily like the key person. I would still fly to accompany like an AE for a specific task. But this was more in my time when I was like a full on VP sales for different startups. And my background was VC backed, right? So a lot of money raised, a lot of, stakes are high, and you go all in. And for that, for sure, you have to be in person. And I think, it's an advantage and a disadvantage. I think the advantage that occurred when COVID hit is suddenly everybody's on a screen and we're kind of like leveling the playing field. Like the the VC backed company and the startup with no money is basically on a Zoom call. But the reality is, like, if you can like fly in, fly out, go to a conference, every other week, and be like have a lot of physical presence, you're going to win those deals more often than the startup who's not doing that.
So do you think like okay, so like we're both Americans, right? And it's interesting that we both come from the Northeast, which is like primarily where there's a lot of business, right? In the United States, like so that's Connecticut, New Jersey, New York, especially.
Totally, yeah, totally.
And that's something. So going back to it, right? Is there? Do you think? I mean, in general, for the people that are mostly in the Western hemisphere, I'm talking like Western Europe, Spain, France, also in like the Americas, North America, Canada, United States. Do you actually recommend, like after traveling so much, do you recommend people trying this lifestyle of like traveling, or do you think that there's like so much holding them back?
No, listen, I think it's an amazing opportunity, like once in a lifetime opportunity. I think it also depends on what you're looking to build, what you're looking to sell. Um, and again, it goes back to your market, like who you're targeting. I do see like it's funny because I've met here a lot of digital nomads, and I don't consider myself a digital nomad. It's because for me, when I think digital nomad, I think or like indie hacker, like I feel like those are folks that are happy to be just a one person team, and they're doing their craft really well, and they're full stack, like building, marketing, selling. Like I'm impressed by those people. Like these are like jack of all trades type folks, and you obviously know a lot, and maybe you consider yourself, what from that crowd. For me, having come from the VC world, that's like the devil. And I was, speaking with a friend who was, we were just making fun, and he built an amazing business. And he's actually a French guy who I met in Bangkok. He built an amazing business, which is, I'm not going to share too much because he's super secretive about his startup, but needless to say, it's in the dating space. And he is making like six figures in MRR. Six figures in MRR, like monthly recurring revenue, six figures. And it is a pure SaaS business related to dating. And he's himself and like one other guy, and that's it. And so if you're doing that, if you're doing stuff that's like consumer type, apps, and he's like automated a bunch of stuff, and he doesn't need to get on calls to close things, good for you. Like I don't have that skill. Like I'm more on like the, B2B, SaaS, like kind of the boring quote unquote, like, startups. And I don't know how to do consumer. Like I wish I did, but consumer is really hard. And he's a brilliant dude, and he's built it all himself. And he was literally telling me, yeah, I don't even need, like he's he's in the wheat work with like a t-shirt and flip-flops and cargos. And he's like, I don't even know what to do with this money. Like I just funnel it into an account in Dubai, and I'll reinvest it. But, so listen, if you could do that, the world is your oyster, and go build it from anywhere. Like enjoy like the life that you can discover around the world.
Okay, so this is an interesting place to kick off this question, because I don't think we've talked about this yet. But there's a $10,000 dream. Like make
Right.
you've heard this, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So like this for everybody else, constantly I hear this from like I just want to make $10,000 and like go to Thailand and go to Japan. How many times do you hear somebody say, I just want to make $10,000 a month? Like once I hit $10,000 a month, then I can go to Japan, or I can go to like Asia or South America. First of all, is $10,000 a month like the actual number that is successful? Because in my opinion, that's way too much, right? Like I'm comfortable with probably a third of that. I mean, then again,
Right.
I'm hunkered down like here in Europe,
Right.
but do you think that that's like reasonable? Like, do you actually need that much? Because I feel like money just doesn't make you happy after so long.
I mean, look, you as you said, you come from Connecticut, and New York, very similar. Like a lot of wealthy people in Connecticut, a lot of wealthy people in New York. In New York, one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of try to break the routine of being a kind of GTM leader in New York is that my wife and I had both like full-time jobs in tech, and we were not saving that much money because like everything, like we were living in Manhattan, everything's expensive, and 3 kids, and we're just like, how do you do it? Like nannies and then and daycares, and just like it's just super hard. So in New York, you can't do it. In Thailand, for sure, and some of these other countries like Southeast Asia, I think is one of the best parts of the world for kind of ROI, so to speak, right? And it really depends on your lifestyle. Like we came here from New York, we're like, wow, everything is so cheap. And then I talked to some friends who were like, whoa, you should try, Vietnam. It's like a third of Thailand. And I'm like, I'm also not seeking to go to the cheapest place in the world. Like I'm sure if I go to Azerbaijan or Sudan, it's even cheaper, but I'm not necessarily optimizing every single penny. Is 10K the magic number? It is a number that's thrown around a lot. I think it depends on, again, your lifestyle and what you're looking for. For me, it wouldn't be enough, paradoxically. Like I just feel like I'd need more. And that's also the big dilemma I have when I'm like thinking of VC backed startups, and bootstrap. Like I think for me, when I think of bootstrapped, it's getting to the 10K is kind of like, that's a great milestone. But I think the greater like side to this is that you're your own boss, and you kind of are in control of your destiny. And you're making 10K now, and maybe it's 15 the next year, and it's 25 in 3 years, right? It's that sense of independence, versus when you're a VC backed company, which what I've been doing my whole career up until now. You are basically like every board meeting, especially when you're on the go to market side of things. You have the board that's asking you, where are we at regarding our targets, our milestones? Why haven't we hit them? If we didn't hit them, and your ass is on the line. Like, I think that the metric is like VPs of sales have a 15 to 18 month, basically turnaround. Like, so they get fired every 15 to 18 months in the SaaS B2B world. Why? Because, the VP sales is in the hot seat, right? So if you don't hit your number, for 6 to 18 months, you do typically have a 6 month grace, but after that, you better start showing results. Then you're out. And so, yeah, I think that is the biggest determinant, not necessarily that exact MRR number. I think it's, do you want to be, basically somebody else's bitch, or do you want to be in control of your destiny? And I think that's what's appealing, but for me, it would have to be more than 10K a month to be able to, live the type of lifestyle I want. But yeah, I guess that's a personal question too, right?
It's a very personal question. And I think like that's that's what it comes down to, right? Like I taken less money, like a lot less money now than I used to, but it was because of my own choices. Like
Totally.
what I chose was like my sleep sanity and, the balance of like, I'm much happier. And I would say I walk away with like 80 to 90% of what I was going to make. So, like
Totally.
reasonably speaking, I've weighed the odds. I've like leveled up my skills and my knowledge and everything like this, but like to match. But especially with the startups and marketing agencies and like my background in that space, some of them can get really picky, and
Totally.
trying to sell into that while being abroad. I've gotten hit, and I'll never forget this. I worked for a really great agency in New York a long time ago up on Broadway, and I was remote. I was doing their HubSpot implementation, and then I got promoted to marketing operations director, and they said to me, we want you to move here, and they gave me like a 6-figure offer. And I was like, I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, I was like 20 something, like early 20s. I was like, oh my God, it's a 6-figure offer. Like, holy crap. But like, I've already been in Prague for so long. Like, I like this life here. I like the European lifestyle.
Totally.
And like going back to this, I probably would have made 10K a month, if I had committed to that and that leadership position. Now I'm like almost like fractional GTM and ABM like leader in the technology space as well. Do I take that home? Maybe. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hope so. But
Yeah.
like at the same time, I'm much happier, and I've definitely
Totally.
become more comfortable. Of course, the more in your direction of the world that you go, I feel like money goes a lot farther, at least in Central
A
Europe. Like,
100%. A
yeah.
100%. Yeah, and again, so again, the nuance for me is like if I think of like I have three kids now in international schools, and those tend to get pricey. So like I think that might also be like some of the differences, but yeah, money goes way further here. And I have buddies who are single, living in Bangkok, like with 3K a month. As you said, like they are like kings. And so you can go, your money can go really far here. You can have a really great, like seriously, like when you're young is the best time to travel, and you can do so much remotely and always fly back. Like I've met a lot of founders who are making it work. Again, the only caveat I would say is, and I told you this too, like if I look at the WeWork where I'm at, I would say 80% are European, maybe 20% American, and then most of them are doing either consumer or stuff that doesn't necessarily require that you're on a call to close a big deal with a customer. I mean, sorry, that you have to be physically there to close a big deal with a customer. You can close the whatever 10K deal with that customer on a Zoom call and those type of things.
Do you feel like this? Okay, this is like maybe personal. It's probably gonna piss a lot of people off, honestly. Do you feel like the reason why a lot of Europeans go to Europe and a lot of Europeans go to Southeast Asia and a lot of Americans go to Europe is because of like almost the same reason? Do you think it's mostly about like the lifestyle differences? Because I
Yeah,
see
for
what I
sure.
see a lot is I see a lot of like work, a lot of talent leaving the United States and going to move abroad, like going eastward
Yeah, for
by
sure.
around 6 to 9 hours. But then
Yeah.
I see a lot of like leaders and visionaries actually coming from Europe and going to San Francisco or going to the United States and getting money. So I feel like it's like this way on, East is like lifestyle and like food and balance and like these things and like
Yes,
great talent.
100%.
And then when you go west, when you go to, let's just, for example, like San Francisco, like Silicon Valley, you have all these visionaries and you have like top creme de la creme kind of like tech talent, stuff like this.
Totally.
Do you agree?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, listen, the Bay Area and to a certain extent New York are like still like tech hubs. And so if you want to make it big in tech, at some point you just have to move to the US. I have a lot of friends of mine who are founders from Europe and who have made that leap and don't regret it. And I hate to say it, like it is going to piss people off, but the people that come here or move east, whether it's Europe or east or Asia, yeah, they're looking for more of a balance. So they're less maybe ambitious. And again, this is what pisses people off, but it's true. Like the people I meet here, they don't want to raise money. They want to, build a nice lifestyle business. But that's pretty cool. Like the story I told you about this guy, I like that is more money than some of the VC backed startups that founders that I know, right? Making like 1.3 million a year, whatever that number is. Like that's an amazing with like zero funding. That's an amazing story. So there are some, but by and large, if you're a super aggressive, ambitious founder that's not from the U.S., I would say that migration towards the U.S. Makes sense. And I also think it depends on what stage you are in life. In some cases, it totally makes sense, and in some cases, you're like, all right, I want to get off that for a little bit. It doesn't have to be forever, and you can always get back on that hamster wheel whenever you feel like it.
Do you feel like people look down on you though? Because what I've seen in Europe is that locals, I mean, my girlfriend is local, she's Czech, but like what I've seen and what I've heard is that, quote, people come here because it's cheaper and that makes it more expensive for us. And you have like this
I see.
rampant tourism, you have this rampant digital nomad quote lifestyle in like Portugal and Spain where they like spray paint their doors. It's like tourists go home.
Right.
And is it the same in Asia?
I would say definitely not in Thailand at least. I think so for Thailand, they're actually very appreciative that there's smart foreigners with money that are coming and they're participating in the economy. So it's not like, yeah, I've heard that a lot for Portugal and a lot of folks saying like that locals can't afford to, find a nice place anymore, and it's changed the landscape, which I get. But there's not that same there's not that same atmosphere in Asia at all. I think they're incredibly grateful, and Thai people are really really friendly, really super nice, very welcoming. So I've never felt anything like that. Again, I can't speak for other parts of Asia. Again, I have friends in Singapore. Singapore, obviously, it's like an international hub, so they don't have that feeling either. I'm not sure about Vietnam. I have some friends who actually came from Vietnam and said that the vibe is a bit different, and that they prefer Thailand. So I guess it depends. There's probably like some regional differences as well. But at least in Thailand, it's amazing. Like they are really, really welcoming, and there's not that negative kind of side effect of, oh, you guys are, making life for the rest of us super expensive, basically.
In Central Europe, it's okay. That's good to know in Thailand because I want to go visit. I'm just really afraid
Sure.
of the time zone jump.
Yeah, I think the time zone is going to be hard for sure. But you sound like you're a structured guy. You have your guardrails in place. So long as you make that kind of clear for your clients, I think it can work. I think it can work. You have to have some boundaries, basically.
I love being hands-on. Like I love being involved, and that's why I don't take more than like 5 or 6 clients at a time. It's because like I can't split my focus that much. Um, I just like I'm so afraid of losing the quality. Like when I move around, like yeah, I do take my laptop if I go to Italy for the week and stuff like this. Like last podcast I recorded, it was in Genoa, and I took a few meetings there, right? But I'm really afraid of like dropping quality if like my personal life is being all changed and like getting on flights and changing all the time, and I don't know. It's just a fear I have. I don't know how rational it is though.
I mean, look, there's always an adjustment period. And I think your clients, I'm sure, you've been working with them for a while, and if you explain to them, hey, I'm transitioning to the other part of the world, they'll be totally understanding. Um, Again, like you might lose some, right? Like it depends, of your clients. The one that was in California for me, I actually kind of parted ways, decided to part ways, and they totally understood. But we tried to make it work for like 4 months. But it was just too hard. And eventually like I helped transition the team, et cetera. So like it was all good. But yeah, you might lose some, but you'll win some others. There's lots of opportunities in Asia. And again, I think my reason for coming here, was that I don't want to have regrets, right? There's, once in your lifetime, you can like do this type of traveling. And for me, it was, my kids are small. I could just pack them and go someplace else. And New York's not going anywhere. So that's kind of the mindset. So I think you should apply the same rules yourself. Like, don't regret not, exploring Asia or Southeast Asia, because there's some great opportunities here, great people, and you can always just do it for like 1 or 2 years. There's a DTV visa that's very easy to get, and for sure, then you can be, sleeveless all year round, and then, drinking coconuts whenever you want.
I've noticed that I've worked from beaches, and this like it sucks. I can't sugarcoat that anymore. Like working when it's really warm outside from a beach in Greece when it's like 38, 40 degrees Celsius, or like like
Yeah, yeah,
85
totally.
to 95 Fahrenheit. I don't want to work. I'm just
Right.
so relaxed. I have to take the time off. I've noticed it's hard for me to do like 1 hour, go to the beach, come back, and like content, like personal life context switch. Um, I don't know. I felt resistance from a lot of leadership in the past of saying like kind of like the side eye kind of like feeling. It's like, oh, you're working like from Greece, like, oh, that's amazing,
Right.
and then it's like, don't relax too much, but they'll never say that. So I don't.
No,
y-
but I can understand that. Yeah. And listen, I'm a little bit the same. I think that's why I'm in Bangkok. I think I know some founders who are on these islands, or even in Bali. I met a guy who was kind of like hopping and stopped in a WeWork in Bangkok. He's like, oh yeah, I'm from Bali, and he was like, listen, it's kind of weird because people just stop and go surfing, at 3 p.m. and I'm not used to that. And I would not be able to just work on a laptop in front of the ocean with no AC. Like I need AC. I mean, we're Americans, goddammit. We need RAC. And yeah, I like there is an energy here that I appreciate, and yeah, I think if I were just in like in some remote tropical island with sand in my in my feet, I wouldn't have that same energy and structure to be able to be productive, just like you mentioned. So I think it's I mean, at least for myself, I think it makes a lot of sense, and I feel the same way.
Yeah. Would you? I mean, like you've been abroad. How many years have you been abroad now?
It's a good question. So again, this has been a year and a half, so it's very fresh. But I've lived abroad, in like Europe, um, Middle East a bit. So I've been abroad probably like seven years total. Yeah.
That's awesome. What's like one what's like one thing that was like really hard to learn, but when you like now it's in your head, it's like solid, like an understanding of it.
I mean, look, I think one of the things which everybody talks about is like the cultural differences of doing business everywhere, like in different places. And like it's super true. Like when you're in New York, you're in a hurry, you're impatient, and you want things to happen, right? And that's really not the case in other places. And um, and so when you're even like I worked with Koreans and obviously South Koreans, Japanese folks, and different parts of Asia. It's yeah, it's you have to really adjust to those different mindsets and those different cultures. And I think it's actually very difficult. You can make a lot of professional mistakes that you don't necessarily anticipate. So it's a bit of a cliche what I'm saying, but I guess my point is being able to do business in those countries means that you have to make a lot of sacrifices. And I have to say, like, I miss the U.S. Like I don't intend on just being here forever. I think we talked about that. This is just a chapter, and you should just have a bunch of chapters in your life that you can look back to. But I miss the U.S. for so many things, like the way you can get everything so fast and quickly and set up amazingly. And like I don't know, like e-commerce sucks here. Like in Asia, like it's. I mean, I think there's just a lot of garbage stuff that you buy online, and yeah, there's just like there's a lot of things I miss. So. You have to learn to cope with those things, but you're living in Europe. Europe has so many amazing things to it, right? So there's a lot of things to appreciate too. So take the positives and set aside the negatives, but adjust to those cultural business practices because that's a tough one, and you can kind of learn the hard way. The mistakes that can cost you like big deals, and that's tough.
I think one of the very first thing I agree with that first of all holistically, and on my side when I first moved to Czech Republic, I didn't realize that like well I mean I knew that the culture was like very different. A lot of people from the outside of Czech Republic will say, "Oh, Czechs are like really mean," and as a foreigner that's been here for like literally almost 6 years in a few months now, I can say that they just usually for the most part are not interested, and when they are not interested they do this and they stare at you, which is fine, but like my favorite game to play now is don't pet the dog and stare at people on the escalator, and this is like my favorite Central European game to play because in Germany people will look at you completely differently. They'll look at you, in my opinion, they look at me as a foreigner in whatever light they want to look at me, and then they look at me with like a curiosity of like what are you doing here, like
Right.
why are you doing here, right? And when I'm in Austria, I don't speak German by the way, when I'm in Austria it's like people will like mind their own business, but I don't really feel so judged. In Czech Republic and also in Slovakia when I've gone there, of course like this is a completely different history book, like this is Slavic history versus like American
Right.
history, right?
Right. Totally.
And I've noticed that when I speak to people, I can get around the whole city just in English. Right? In Europe,
Amazing.
many,
Right.
the unified language of the world is English at this point, right? Can I speak in Czech? I think so. I mean a little bit. I could speak in
That's
like
amazing.
A2.
How long have you lived there now?
Almost 6 years.
Wow.
So
Nice.
I'm not like B1. Like if it revolves around food, I could probably read a recipe like
Right.
95%. I can assume,
Right.
like put the pasta in the water, boil it, close the, like put it in
It's
the
amazing.
oven, and I can read it, and I can read and check like for the most part if I'm like texting somebody or if I need to go to the post office or something. That the post office was a hard one for me because they're all grumpy old ladies and nobody wants to talk to you there. Um, but what I noticed is that um, like living abroad, especially here, is like doing culture is like so different. Like I would have never thought that you go out and you have a beer with a potential client, or you go out and you have a beer and you handshake on it to like discuss something, or the night before you get hired, like if you're taking over somebody's position, like you do the training and then after the training you go and drink like a whole bottle or three of like wine from Slovakia, right?
Right.
Um,
Totally.
True story. And then I showed up the next day and I was like, uh-oh, you know. Um, but like, should you drink on the job? No. Are you allowed to drink on the job? No. Is it culturally accepted? For the most part, yes.
Right.
Like beer capital of the world. But I go back to United States and I've taken this like very direct approach from like being here in Prague of like nobody wants to hear about your shit.
Right. That's funny.
Nobody wants to listen to you if they don't know you. Why are you saying
I was gonna say
how are you?
you're becoming European. Yeah, totally.
I feel like it, and I've taken this like if you don't know them, don't ask them how they are because
Right.
you don't know them, right? But as an American, you're just like, oh
That's
hi, how
so.
are you? I'm good,
That's
and then you
yeah,
keep
yeah,
walking.
totally.
And I've taken this into like my business world of like this personal like I don't know you, I don't know, I don't want to know, right? And I've taken this into the business world of like doing business across
But
cultures
that's
and like
tricky. That's tricky. Like, listen, be
yes,
careful because I mean, again, I can't speak across those different cultures, but yeah, like there is really something like in the U.S. Like, I mean, you know this obviously. If you're like out, like I'm not that much into sports, like or specific like golfing or something like that, or and sometimes you deal with some big shot who's living in Missouri or something, and he can talk for 15 minutes about the game that happened. Did you watch the game? I didn't, but he's still gonna talk about these things, and I actually like. I used to be like New Yorkers obviously were like, all right, let's cut to the chase, but I've kind of learned to appreciate that side too because I'm like, you know what, this is part of the business. Like this is actually part of doing the deal is to getting into these things. So I've become more flexible, and it kind of goes back to your point. What's the hardest is be able to kind of context switch. Like even in again Japanese culture, there are some things that can be really insulting to Japanese, and you have to be very very understanding of hierarchy and how are basically very appreciative of your hosts if they invite you to their offices, etc. And like there's just so many norms that you have to know. And so it's really about being mindful of those and I'm trying not to kind of be like brass knuckles across these different cultures and be like, I'm an American. I'm just going to say hi, shake hands, and that's it. We're done. Let's get to business. Right. So, just I think learning those will get you further in life, basically.
and I think it's when you've seen the world. When you've seen the you like when you're having a conversation with somebody else that's seen the world, their eyes move a different way, and I think like you've seen the world, right? And it people behave differently when they've seen different things. It's quite hard to be able to say like, "Hey, French guy, like that only wants to speak in French," right? Like this is what we're gonna do. And I'm not an expert in French history or French culture, right? And neither, that's not a desire of mine at this very moment. But with Slavic culture and in Czech culture, it's like, okay, like let's stay in touch, like head of these three businesses that's coming on a podcast tomorrow, like, hey, I'm just gonna like let's get a coffee. And I went to their like we just had a beer and we had some beer at their rooftop party when they moved businesses. I feel like Europe is much more the European culture of business is much more soft, but it's all
Right.
about like it's always been about who you know and how long you've known them. But I think
Right.
that the community of business community in Europe is a lot smaller, but it's a lot more segregated. I've
Right.
noticed that a lot of like, of course, like local countries, like Czech countries, or Czech country only really prefers to hire Czech speakers, and like Germany, like they of course try to get their talent with German speakers. But in America, it's like there's so many options where not so many of those options are segregated. I feel like it's only segregated by geography and skill, whereas in Europe, it's not even geography and skill. It's like, hey, will you move from Belgium to France? Do you speak
Right.
Flemish? Do you speak French? Okay, like
Right.
you're good for the position. Um,
Totally.
yeah.
I was going to ask you. I feel like in your situation, as we said, there aren't too many Americans that are moving like west to east because salaries aren't the same. There's a lot of like this is just a common thread. Like Europeans are like when they discover American salaries, like oh my god, six figures, like um, and and so I think for that reason there aren't too many Americans that are living your life, but you have the benefit of being able to have that kind of lifestyle and being in Europe. And I think they probably are appreciative that there's an American that made the effort, so to speak, to come to Europe to understand how they live and how they do business. And I'm sure you actually have a leg up, when it comes to, your basically your perspective around business and how to deal, with go to market across different, kind of vectors. So I think that's a unique advantage for you. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way.
No, you're right. I mean, I haven't really touched on like what I do, but like, yeah, it's like, oh, they see an American. He's been living here for like 3 or 4 years. Like he has a local partner. Like he almost has permanent residence. Like he's not going anywhere, and clearly he has American clients. So, what's the failure point, right?
Right.
And I
Totally.
think a lot of like one of my advantages here, which I didn't realize was an advantage, is that I'm a native English speaker. I mean,
Right.
I mean that sounds like that sounds really
Yeah, yeah,
silly, right?
yeah, yeah.
But when I was first looking for jobs here, like in Prague as well as in like Germany, and I was like applying, and you know what, I never realized that the resumes, the intakes are completely different. It's like you want to put your English level, you want to put your foreign
Totally.
language level, right? And in the United States, it's like your resume's in English. They no shit, you're American, like English, right? But in Europe, like the advantage of saying like native English speaker, XYZ, whatever the pitch was, I changed it, and like the next month I had like interviews like up the kazoo. Um, but yeah,
Crazy.
nowadays, a lot of the startups, a lot of the international facing startups want to have a native English speaker because all of their communication, all of their marketing is in English, unless they're only marketing and selling nationally, which
So
is
so
small.
I don't want to do a shameless plug here, but I will.
Do it.
The app that I built, the funny thing is, so basically, as I said, it's like a Loom on steroids with AI. And one of the things you do is you're just going to record yourself speaking in any language and you can translate in perfect English. And the feedback I got was from foreign founders who had like terrible English accents. And they were Italian, they were Turkish, they came from like all over the world. And they were like, wow, I can now do screen recordings in perfect English. And this goes back to your point is like, there a lot of people don't understand, like if you're speaking English in a screen recording that's supposed to be for, let's say, the US market, Americans won't understand if you have a thick Turkish accent or a thick, French accent, etc. And so I do like, going back to your point, it's critical. Like you're not only fluent, you have like a perfect American accent. People will respect you. They will say, wow, this guy's legit. He knows what he's talking about. He's here for business. So I could not agree with you more. And it is rare in Europe, I have to say.
A lot of like there are a huge amount of Americans here in Prague. Like there's a whole Facebook group, and there's like 10,000 or like
Really?
I have to mute that thing because it pisses me off too much. It's like I can't find an apartment. Has somebody help me find an apartment? Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like don't even get me started on like the housing situation.
Wow, amazing.
But yeah, like I don't hang out with any of them because you know what they do? A lot of the Americans here, what they do is they teach English. And that it's a whole market is like teaching English and like foreign English teaching. Like it's I don't know. I think it's in Thailand too. Like a lot of people go to Bali and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna teach yoga."
Yeah, so that's where like I have a little bit of blinders on is I'm in like really in tech, and so we work like everybody's like in digital, like they're selling something online, their services, freaking drop shipping, e-commerce, SaaS. But I'm not, I'm not kind of, I guess, seeing that whole other side, which is, yeah, you're right. The Americans that are here and teaching yoga or teaching English. I'm sure there are a lot of those, but yeah, I get what you're saying around like avoiding that crowd a little bit.
So, okay, so I think we're gonna wrap up. This is a fun conversation, but I think I have one final question for you. In less than 5 sentences or in a short explanation, what's one piece of advice that you'd give to either Americans or anybody that's looking to go travel and better integrate and in the business sense?
So this is a tough one. Let me think about this, and maybe you'll have to cut out the thinking part. Um, Listen, I think again, what you want to make sure that you do. First of all, I encourage a lot of young founders, entrepreneurs to definitely explore the world and try to, live in places where you have some geographic arbitrage, right? From a quality of life standpoint. So I think it's a great opportunity, especially when you're young, pre-kids or when your kids are small. Um, but if you're like, so if the market that you're servicing is going to be the local market, you better be sure you understand like the culture you're in, the nuances of that culture, the pitfalls, and know how to do business in that culture. Not necessarily in that language, because as you said, like English is the language of business. But just make sure you understand how to be able to be respectful and understanding of the culture you're in. Um, in terms of the second part of this is going back to what I said, which is just also think about how you position yourself and how what you aspire to do or to be aligns with that geo. So as I said, if you're doing consumer apps and you're just selling to people all over the world, and then you don't have to be attached to any single place. But if you're going to be selling SaaS and large ticket SaaS to businesses in the U.S., it's going to be a lot harder. So be mindful of that. There are some folks that literally have a very active night life where they're literally on calls with clients at night, but I don't think it's super sustainable. So really be mindful of that intersection, right? It's like the Venn diagram of like your passions and then where they overlap with your target market ICP and the folks you cater to. And ideally there's a good overlap there, because I think truthfully, if your target is the US, Europe is a better option for you. Portugal, Prague, there's a lot of Berlin, maybe Paris, London. There's a lot of great cities there. Asia is a fantastic place to live for sure. I think the ROI in terms of how far your money can go and the quality of life is amazing, but much more difficult if your target market and most of your customers are going to be in the US. So just be mindful of that basically. So that was way more than 5 sentences, but you'll just snip it up and hopefully you can make it into 5.
No, this is going into podcast raw. I'm not gonna really edit it out. No, that's what I like to do. So, where can people find you? You have your own podcast? You're on LinkedIn, I know.
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn, Charles Brun. I don't even know what the handle is there. The podcast, the podcast is Go to Market Hackers, where I interview folks like you soon to talk about basically how to scale your GTM with AI. And a lot of startups are confused about that. So I think it's a really great opportunity to kind of uncover and showcase what's possible. And then on Twitter, I'm also on Twitter _ Charles Brun. So any one of those will work.
Cool. Well, thanks for jumping on. I will
Spencer,
listen to your piece.
It was
This
great
awesome.
to join. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Cool. Thank you for coming. See you.
See you.